I just finished rewatching Black Mirror for like the third or fourth time all the way through to get ready for season 6 that's dropping on Netflix in June. So before then, I wanted to rank them all from worst to best in my personal opinion. We're going to go through here today, put them in a tier list, all the episodes of Black Mirror. This tier list doesn't include Bandersnatch, but I'll verbally tell you where I'm going to put it. But let's jump right into it. Tier listing every episode of Black Mirror. And we're just going to go right in release order. So first up, we have the national anthem where the Prime Minister does you know what to the pig. Unforgettable pilot, the most bold pilot episode of television there has ever been, and there will be. This episode, I'm giving an average. I think a lot of people dislike it because it is very graphic and like to rank it lower. But the way they set the stage for the show is just absolutely incredible. Got everyone hooked immediately. It's a British show, or when it started out as a British show, and having the Prime Minister literally do that to a pig in your pilot episode, that's bold, and I respect the hell out of it. Next up, we have 15 Million Merits. I'm also putting that on the average tier. I think a lot of people might like this a little more than me. It's definitely not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I just give it like a 3 out of 5 star. And season 1 concluded with the entire history of you, and to me, this is a peak episode of Black Mirror. This is everything you want in an episode of Black Mirror because it's a dystopian technology that you could feasibly see happening in the future and giving you one of the most twisted and messed up hours of television to go along with it. Now we're into season 2, and one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror of all time, Be Right Back. Domhnall Gleeson, incredible. Hayley Atwell, incredible. This is just such a dark and sad and depressing episode of Black Mirror. One of my favorites. Very right up there with my top 2. I think it's number 2 for me though. But still, peak episode, one of my favorites. I rewatch it often. Then next up we have White Bear, and that is another peak episode to me. I think this is where Black Mirror really hit its stride in the original days. End of season 1, rushing right into season 2. These were all incredible hours of television. But all good things must come to an end. The Waldo moment, that's a terrible episode of Black Mirror. It's a terrible episode of TV. It's the worst episode there is. Just horrible. I mean, it doesn't help them that the whole Donald Trump political state of America became such a, publicized, crazed show that it was. That made the Waldo moment look even less crazy because there's something going on in real life that's even more crazy than that. But still, don't need to talk about it too much. Terrible episode. And then we were at the holiday special, and that is White Christmas. That's a very good episode to me. You have John Hamm, you have 3 different stories that all intersect in the end. It's twisted, good vibes, great acting. Very good episode of Black Mirror to end off season 2. And at this point, we're into season 3. This is when Netflix has taken over production and distribution of this series. So how are they going to do in their first season handling Black Mirror? Well, they start off with Nosedive, and I think it's a very good episode. I think this is like the closest Black Mirror episode in terms of what I think could happen in the near feasible future. Very disturbing, very chilling, very real feeling, being someone who works in the social media industry. Obviously, like, I'm doing it every single day, so this episode hits a little extra close to home for me. But Bryce Dallas Howard is incredible. This is a great episode, great way for Netflix to kick it off. And then Netflix's second episode ever is Playtest, and this is a hot take because this is peak for me. This is one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. This is a 5-star episode for me. It's the scariest by far. It's disturbing, very well acted. Yeah, there's kind of a little too many twists. Like, there's a twist and a twist and a twist, and just when you think you've been twisted enough, another twist will come. But still, this episode is scary. It's stuck with me. It's awesome to think about a VR technology getting to something like this. Obviously, hopefully with a different result. But I love this episode. I know a lot of people probably have it in the middle or maybe towards the bottom. This is one of my favorite episodes of all time. We have Shut Up and Dance, and this episode is also one of the more disturbing episodes of Black Mirror. Obviously, the show as a whole, every episode is pretty disturbing. But this one of the most disturbing episodes. So darkly chilling, and the end result is just something that's satisfying but also horrific at the same time. Great episode. And Netflix really just came out swinging in their first season, because that is San Junipero. That's my favorite episode of Black Mirror of all time. We'll even slide it over to the 1 slot just because that's how much I dig that episode. It's truly one of the best romances that's ever been told in a 1-hour period. This is, yes, a great episode of Black Mirror, my favorite episode of Black Mirror, I think the best episode of Black Mirror. But also, you could literally just turn this on a date night, or you could recommend this to someone as just like, hey, this is a great standalone romance 1-hour, 10-minute episode or something if you want to watch, like, if you're hanging out with, your significant other or something. But this is just such a great episode. Whether you watch Black Mirror or not, I'll recommend this show to everyone, or that episode to everyone. Incredible. Then we have Men Against Fire. To me, that's an average episode. I don't think it's missed or anything, but it's such an interesting technology because it really goes into the dehumanization of people in war-torn countries and how soldiers are able to commit these despicable acts by being able to, get something like a mask to be put on the people that they're dealing with in a day-to-day life. So I think the technology is really interesting. The way they handled it, I feel like could have been a little more compelling. And then we ended off with Hated in the Nation. This is the one with all of the bees in it. And to me, this is a very good episode. Black Mirror's had a couple of these. You think about USS Callister, you think about White Christmas, and you think about this one, and which are more almost feature-length features. They're about 90 minutes in length. This is basically a movie within itself. And I thought this was very interesting, very telling of the current social media climate we live in, where people are getting canceled left and right. This really attacks it in such a great dystopian way. And with that, we are on to season 4. I think season 3 is the best season of Black Mirror, and I think season 4 is just not that great. We're going to go through it here. However, USS Callister started off, and that's a peak episode, just like Hated in the Nation. This is another basically movie with Jesse Plemons and with a great cast supporting him, Kirstie Milioti. Just this episode's so good, and it's such a great sci-fi. The same thing I would recommend San Junipero to someone who, like, even if you're not going to watch Black Mirror, but you want a romance, San Junipero has been recommended to you. Same thing here with USS Callister. If you're not a fan of Black Mirror, don't want to get into it, but you love sci-fi, I'd recommend USS Callister to everyone. Next up, we have Archangel, which deals with having an implant put into your child so you can track them and see them and protect them at all times. To me, this one's missed because I do think it is a very interesting technology. It wasn't a terrible episode, but it missed the mark by a pretty big degree. I think it could have been a lot better with the technology they're given. But the acting was very uneven, and the end result of how this whole story all boils up in the final climax feels really weird. Then next up, you have Crocodile starring Andrea Riseborough. I think this is a well-acted episode of Black Mirror, and the technology is very interesting of being able to always have surveillance and looking at people's memories for legal cases. But I think the way the story unfolded really missed the mark in terms of what they were going for here. Acting was there. The setting was awesome. Like in this, it looked like a Nordic country. It was snowy, beautiful landscape. She had lived in like a billionaire house. Very cool setting, very cool technology. The way it plays out, though, wasn't the greatest. I think it missed the mark here. Then we have Hang the DJ, which is the dystopian dating app simulation episode. I think it's just an average episode. Like, it's cute, it's heartwarming. It didn't, blow my socks off or anything like that, but it definitely wasn't bad. Just gonna throw it right in the middle there. Then we have Metalhead, probably the most controversial episode of Black Mirror because, this is black and white. There's basically no dialogue, so that's going to be very divisive for a lot of people, especially when the rest of the series has been more standard storytelling for these dystopian stories. For me, this missed, though. I'm not going to call it terrible. A lot of people would. I think a lot of people who are more like NYU film students would say this is a peak, very good episode of Black Mirror. I just think it missed the mark. For me, didn't really enjoy much about this. It's just barely hanging on a thread between being terrible and between missed. But I think it's missed the mark for me. Just very boring and dull episode that didn't do much for me. Then finally we have Black Museum, and I think this one's average, which is a little bit of a hot take because I think a lot of people hold it very highly. And I think the first time I saw this episode, I held it highly as well. But on rewatch, it just didn't do much for me. I think it was like trying to be like White Christmas, but didn't pull it off because it's the same exact thing. I mean, it's Black Museum, White Christmas, but same exact thing in terms of they had 3 storylines here that all kind of interweave in towards the end for a very dark and chilling finish. And I think it's because I binged through this series when I rewatched it, and I just realized like Black Museum is really just a different flavor of White Christmas, and it felt very unoriginal and felt like they just basically just carbon copied that story. So next we have season 5, which is only 3 episodes, but before that we have Bandersnatch, which isn't going to be on here, but I'm going to put that as a missed here. And the reason is because Bandersnatch, to me, one of the better stories in all of Black Mirror. I'd put it in a peak or very good tier for the story, but the gimmick of the choose your own adventure really just frustrated me on rewatch. Like, there's so many dead ends you go down, and I totally get that's what you're saying, or that's one of the themes of this episode is trying to say, free will isn't everything you think it is. And when you think you have decisions, you actually don't have decisions because the outcome's predetermined and we have all these separated timelines and different tendrils in the universe where every outcome will eventually happen. So the point of that is kind of just filtering you towards what the ultimate end goal, what they wanted you to get to, and that is. But at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered in that episode is you're picking what song you're going to listen to, and that's the only thing that stuck. Otherwise, it would just kind of loop you back around and make you redo it. I don't know. Frustrated me a lot. Didn't love it. I would put that in the missed category. But now we're getting on to season 5. And I love Black Mirror, and I can't wait for season 6 to come, but season 5 was awful. Striking Vipers first. Missed, terrible, could be right in between. I'm going to put that in the missed, though, because it is like an interesting technology and interesting insight of having, lovers developed through video games online, which many people have had happen before, will happen again in the future, and this kind of takes that to a whole new level. Not a great episode, though, just not a great episode. Then next up we have Smithereens, and to me this episode's average. I think overall it kind of missed the mark in terms of being a great episode, but Andrew Scott, his performance in this might be the number 1 performance I would rank in all of Black Mirror. His performance is so compelling, so emotional, he shows so much range, and he's so unhinged in such a perfect way. Great performance. Not a great episode, just kind of right in the middle, average. And lastly, we have Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2, and that's a terrible episode. This episode is the visual equivalent of nails on a chalkboard. None of it was because of Miley Cyrus. She did incredible. Truly great performance throughout, but everyone else in that episode just didn't really give me much. The technology itself is interesting with AI currently in real life starting to take over the music industry. This kind of gives you an idea of how people can just take what's from the artist without their consent, but it seems like the AI we're going down towards now is more like we're just going to have AI create music. We don't even need the artists. So I don't know. Didn't love this episode. It's kind of a hard watch, to be honest. And like I said, season 5 was the worst season we've had of Black Mirror yet. But this is where it's all stacking out here with peak, very good, average, missed, and terrible. All in all, like I said in the Letterboxd review, I would rather have a show like this that gives me 5 out of 5s, gives me 3 out of 5s, and gives me 1 out of 5s, rather than a show that just doesn't take any risks and it's just like a 3 out of 5 throughout. I know some people would prefer something that's just kind of average and consistent. Totally okay with that. For me, I like something taking risks, being different, being creative, being unique every single time. That's what Black Mirror will do. That's what they're going to continue to do in season 6, which I cannot wait for. But that concludes today's video. I'm back on the grind of posting 2 times per week, every Tuesday and Fridays. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Drop a like if you can. Comment down below what's your favorite Black Mirror episode and what do you disagree with here the most. And as always, I'm going to see you in the next video, which will be on Friday, which is going to be a tier list of actors, I believe. We'll see. Stay tuned. Subscribe.